Hello and welcome to the Subvert Podcast, your entry into the land of no easy answers. Join us as we attempt to merge neuroscience and sock puppets to navigate the vagaries of the mind.
Ah, perfect. Okay. Yeah. No sudden movements. Start the show.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Now that we've got ourselves adjusted mostly here, I'm going to open up my drink so you don't have to hear that for the rest of the episode. Yeah, welcome to the podcast. This is the Subvert Podcast. As always, I am Aaron Stewart. Here.
Are you? Because I was wondering
Kristen,
who you
I
were.
know. Well,
this guy sits down and I'm like...
So I guess I should reintroduce myself again. If you've watched, I guess, so Z and I did an episode on the taking off of the beard and kind of the motivation behind and such. Yeah. Right, just about how, I get to kind of reset myself by taking it off, whereas a lot of people don't really have that option, right? True. Where you're kind of prejudiced against due to all sorts of different things, and I get to hopefully, become more credible.
Well, it's like for women, it's always the ongoing joke, like we cut bangs.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. Right, which lets you at least kind of change up and become someone, right? Like, I always consider that a bit of a reset. I try to do that every once in a while where I'll just shave off or try something different or just try to become something, right? Just because that gives you the opportunity to kind of be like, okay, so what parts of that didn't I like, and try to find a new way of doing things, right? But, yeah.
It's awesome. Well, it's like a whole new co-host, everyone.
Hey.
There we go. Your comments finally got through.
God, that beard, what the hell?
Well, it was distracting people, like the birds that were making a home in there and...
Constantly moving, and what's that? What is in there? Is that a puppet? Who knows? Well, now we're going to have to do a video of the puppet coming out of the beard. It's going to be loads of fun. Yeah.
Grow it back just for that one shot.
Oh, no, I kept it. It's saved in a bag in the bag. I washed it first. I mean,
that doesn't make it any better. Gross.
Well, where were the birds going to live? You think I was just going to evict them and then throw it away into the garbage? They're worth more than that.
It's all for the birds, sure. Right.
Everything I do for the birds.
Oh my God. In a way, segues into what
Exactly.
we're talking about. I guess those were mild insults, but all in good fun. But we are talking today about a study out of, I think it was Denmark, wasn't it?
They had an idea that negativity affects your brain more than positivity.
Yeah. So this was testing that theory of how does it affect the brain, and does the brain actually hold on to insults or react more strongly to insults than it does to positive compliments?
And I think, we can all, when you get back into any time in your life where you have been insulted, I mean, that it holds way more weight than when somebody compliments you. Somebody compliments you, I'm especially bad for it, being like, yeah, whatever, moving on. Yeah. Right? Like, and so that holds so little weight inside my head. But if somebody criticizes me at all, it becomes a real, and now my brain goes into this loop of what did I do? How do I fix it? What do I do? How to fix it? Yeah. Right? Which, from what I've been told, is not necessarily healthy. So...
Well, we all do it,
Yeah,
like absolutely. I definitely will sit there and ruminate on it, and it shakes up your entire sense of being sometimes, right? So yeah, it's a tough one. It's always sticks too. Everyone's like, oh, just let it roll off your back, and it's really hard.
When I was reading an article about, I think it's rejection sensitive dysmorphia, where apparently a symptom of ADHD is that rejection, again, resounds more in the brain than it would even in someone who normally has this 10 times more, like that was the study they found is 10 times more effective in the brain, essentially, right? To last longer for, right? With more of an, it's like essentially being slapped in the face. It was what the MRIs showed. Yeah. Was it was essentially the same reaction in the same parts of the brain as being smacked. which again makes a lot of sense, because that's how a lot of people, right? Like as soon as you insult them, you get that just like, what the fuck, right? Yeah. Like as if you've just been smacked in the face for no reason, right? So that reaction absolutely does make a lot of sense, and to have that, the MRI scans where you can actually watch a brain do that. Yeah. Right, and go, aha, okay, so it wasn't just me, it's actually, that's a function of the brain that activates this part of the brain that makes you go into that, okay, all right, cool. Yeah. Right? Which
I guess like back to tribal times, that probably would be a necessary response because it'd be so important to fit in.
well, and this
socially.
is I mean, if you exactly, it's that social cue that
Yeah.
I think is the main driver of the thing. Is like, how else would one in like a tribal culture essentially, force people into not lying or cheating or stealing or all these things that we're right, like is essentially a social construct of
Yeah.
shame,
Yeah.
essentially, right? Dragging them through the street and going, "Don't do that," in front of everybody, where they have to look at everybody and they're all going, "Yeah, don't do that,"
Yeah.
right? Whether they necessarily agree with that or not, that's unfortunately kind of the tribal nature of us, is that we'll follow along with this because I guess that's what we're doing,
Yeah.
right? Despite that being empirically, sometimes the wrong way of doing things. But yeah, it's that rejection sensitivity that would lead to now an overstimulation of that, and so
Yeah.
now every time then you get that kind of learned helplessness too. Every time you try to do something and somebody goes no, you go "Rrr," right, and it immediately deflates you, and now you just have that, well, why would I even try when every time I try somebody just goes no, and my brain goes "Rrr,"
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So I mean, this is where again, like what we try to get to here is that it's not your fault, right? I mean, it's kind of your fault, right? But in a lot of cases, this is something that just our brains, we don't understand enough about them to be able to say like, no, this is definitely definitively just your fault and you should have known better, right?
Yeah.
In a lot of cases, this is something that I just have this part of my brain that now that I'm aware of it, at least gives me some sort of arming mechanism to be able to, okay, so as soon as I feel that, I can now start to try to pull myself away from.
But it's
right?
got to be difficult, right? So if the findings
Absolutely.
of this, where it's an insult is being registered the same as a slap in the face, it kind of goes back to the analogy we use a lot of children on the playground, right? Like, you hurt me, your immediate reaction isn't, oh, it's I want to hurt you back.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
And we see this now a lot, and people are just constantly insulting people, and how fast do you see it everywhere?
Yeah.
So quick to call names and shut down. And it must be like a domino effect of, okay, well, I've been slapped, I want to slap someone else. The chain of slapping.
We hear about celebrities on social media all the time where, someone will say something and a bunch of people will pile onto that, and then they talk about their mental state
Yeah.
from that. And it's not something that you can just dismiss, right? Like, yeah, they're celebrities, they have a certain amount of this thing going on, but there's got to be some line where we can just say, like, that the insulting, the demeaning, that
Yeah.
kind of stuff, we need to have some sort of handle on what's causing it, what do we do about it, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do we make it so people don't feel like they have to demean others in order to feel better about
Yeah.
themselves,
Yeah.
right? I think that's kind of a key here, and I guess social media helps to insulate us against the effects of that,
Yeah.
which makes it easier to spew that kind of bullshit sometimes, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, and it's also a world where you're increasingly powerless, I would say, in kind of day to day. And then you have platforms like social media that give you just that little bit of, yeah, I told that perfect stranger how he or she should think.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. And unfortunately, when you get you get that echo chamber effect where other
Yeah.
people then agree with it, despite again it not necessarily being in our best interests to agree with that, because if you were put into that situation, you would probably not want to be there. And
Yeah.
this is where I keep coming back to this litmus test of these things where if you were there, and I get some people, yeah, that gets them off. Well, whatever, right? Everybody's got their thing. Right?
Yeah.
Some people enjoy the thrill of hurting others, I guess, and that's something to be addressed on a later
Well,
podcast.
that's sad. Yeah.
Right.
I think that would be not a huge majority of people, but we
Well,
do.
and there's also, and we're going to talk about this in a separate episode, I think, but there was also a thing I was reading about how they found that, like, the sleep episode. Did we publish that one? All right, we'll talk about this the next episode, because the sociopathy involved with even just a lack of sleep,
Yeah.
and that's just one facet of these things that could lead your brain to, like, they found the specific parts of empathy in your brain, and if you shut those off, it's very easy to demean, insult, make the enemy, call them Satanists, make they eat children, all these things that you're seeing now in this just like hyperbolistic
Yeah.
attacking of people.
And it's so quick as
Yeah,
well. It's
yeah.
just an instant, someone doesn't even have to do much. They just need to say a single phrase or, something, or just look at you funny. And it's an instant,
Yeah.
like you said, horrible names. But what shocks me is how fast everyone else is to jump on and join it. Whereas, you'd like to think, again, I always go back to schoolyard politics, right? Where what
Yeah.
you're taught, if you see a gang of kids that are picking on this one kid and insulting them and calling names, it's like, hey, that's wrong. Don't do that.
Yeah.
And instead it's the opposite, and no one seems to be like pointing this out and be like, how about you don't just jump to this person's a fucking idiot that deserves to die.
Well, and the unfortunate part is, if you do watch TV, you see a lot of like the school ground things, or a bunch of kids surrounding two people having a fight and going, fight, fight,
Yeah.
fight.
Yeah.
Which seems the wrong message to be, and then you have to have that one person stand up and be the hero. Like, that seems like the wrong message to be sending.
Yeah.
Right? As opposed to that fight starts, immediately someone runs in and goes, hey guys, don't do this.
Yeah.
Right? What message is it that we're sending to our kids that the first response is fight, fight, fight? And everybody in the crowd just jumps in? Like, that doesn't seem the proper response to this, right?
Yeah.
And so I think the media kind of conditions a lot of the responses that we do have, right? Like, we had talked on a previous episode about the experiment, I think it was Brain Games, where they just had a waiting room, and it was a bunch of people inside, and a bell rang, and every time the bell rang, they would stand up
Yeah.
and then sit back down.
Yeah.
And people coming in off the street didn't know the game. They would hear the bell, watch people stand up, and by the second time of the bell ringing, they were standing up with them going, I guess this is what we're doing,
Yeah.
right? And that's how this social construct works. The
Yeah.
more we see, oh, that must be how we're supposed to do it. We're supposed to throw punches and start bringing out our guns to deal with problems. Wasn't that, oh, I thought every movie I've ever watched just said that was, oh, okay, right, like, conflict resolution. Isn't that, okay, no, I guess not, right?
But I do think it's oh God, words again, hard for me today.
It's so
It's
hot.
just from our desire to fit in, right?
absolutely.
And I think our trust maybe in what would have been perceived as the most powerful, like the leader of the pack, so to speak, right? That we should have some trust in, and so we follow their word. But what's happened is the leaders of our pack are maybe arguably not the best examples.
Some. I mean, and we also run up against a few other biases here where, like in general terms in the brain, the first kind of fact that you hear becomes solid,
Yeah.
right? And harder to dislodge than the actual truth of the situation, right?
Yeah.
So if you're, again, hearing something that's just being, and now a lot of these guys have now taken on this tactic of just repeat it, 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 just repeat it. And the more you say it, the more everybody goes, okay, fuck, fine, God,
Yeah.
right? And that unfortunately has now become the tactic of propaganda,
Yeah.
where they can say whatever the fuck they want. It can be the most outrageous lie.
Yeah.
And as long as you just keep saying it over and over again, people will eventually just give up and let you have your way. Oh my God.
Yeah.
So the petulant child screaming in the supermarket is essentially
Gets the candy.
getting to wander over and grab whatever they want, armfuls of, and throw it, and you just have to get
Yeah.
it for them, because that's how we're dealing with kids these days, and let alone adults.
Well, it is how we're dealing with it.
Yeah.
Like the bullies are getting rewarded time and time again. We both work customer service, and it's, the ones that scream the loudest, that throw the most insults at you, that essentially slap you across the face the hardest, are the ones that get rewarded. And we really need to get into why we have allowed this to happen in our society.
Yeah.
Why are we so afraid of, that's wrong, that hurt me. This is not how you communicate. You are in a timeout.
I literally have gotten written up because I was being rude to customers.
Yeah.
And I keep going,
You're like, I'm just standing up for myself.
well, let alone, like, there's no time that I'm rude to someone for no reason,
Yeah.
right? And I mean, granted, every once in a while, that reason is internal.
Sure. Yeah.
Right?
Sometimes we all
Internally,
snap in the
yeah,
wrong way.
I reacted the wrong way. You said something and I went, rah, instead of going, wait, But for the most part, if I'm being rude, it's because you've said something to me that I have no other response to other than to be somewhat You know, like my issue is that by allowing people to have these moments of just not thinking,
Yeah.
right? What are we again condoning the behavior of?
Yeah.
You know, instead of just being like, hey buddy, so let's just take a step back there. Right? And I get, could be kind of rude for me to say this, but I feel again it's a customer service and let alone a societal service that I'm doing, trying to again just instill this, why aren't we thinking about things a little bit before just spouting out some bullshit at someone just because it's their job to deal with you? Like that doesn't seem right. Like, let alone then you weren't even planning on tipping me at the end anyway, no matter how much I answered all your questions, brought out all the stuff for you, and right, like, no, nothing. Okay, cool. Have a good day.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, but I can't be rude to them. Oh no.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and again, I just feel like it's something that we've lost here. This art of being, you know, like I get, the whole episode here is about insults and how that kind of sits inside your brain, right? And so, you get to the idea of like roasts, where it's this good-natured ribbing of people that's supposed to make everybody have a little fun.
Yeah.
But when you're put it into the context of the brain chemicals are actually putting this in a context of maybe that's not something that's good for cathartic for people right?
Yeah.
Like,
It is interesting. I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to talk about that as well. Because there is, I lived over in the UK for many years, and it was actually a very endearing thing to take the piss out of someone, right?
Absolutely.
But it's all context is so important here, right? So if someone just comes up and flatly insults you to your face, then that's not going to go well. But if it's someone that does know you and like gentle teasing and, like that's kind of the foundation, that's flirting as well, for the most part. Like there's something about it that can be taken positive as well, which this research didn't get into that particular aspect of it. But a gentle teasing can, that's kind of fun, right? So, it's kind of a tough one to tease out. Or is it? Maybe you brought up a good point.
Actually,
maybe it is somehow still sticking in there.
Well, that was one of the other articles that I sent you, was about how they've discovered that there's essentially one neuron in the brain?
It was a molecule.
Molecule that can essentially determine whether you're going to have a bad or a good memory of something.
Yeah. So this molecule will encode that experience as either positive or negative.
As you're having this memory or having this experience.
Yeah. So I suppose that's where that would come into play then. So if it's done in a positive way.
Neuroscience saves the day, once again.
I love when we answer questions on this show. It's great.
Well, and again, like I've always been under the impression that, the problem was that we didn't understand the brain. The problem was that
still don't.
We have this thing floating inside our heads and everybody goes, I guess that's just what we're doing. And I go, but, and unfortunately that kind of attitude just feels like giving up. Like, it's just this lump of mush and I guess that's just what we've got, as opposed to this thing that you have an active control over that you can actually make physiological changes to with just very small changes to your routine even. You can actually affect major physiological changes to your brain. Meditation enlarges parts of the brain that help make you better at meditation. There we go. I did manage to get that out.
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of actual control that we have over our brains that we, just give over to fate or whatever, right? Like, it's just who we are, I guess. As opposed to, no, this is actually something that now that we've actually seen the parts of the brain that we can hopefully target with these, corrective measures, we hopefully will give more control over. And so hopefully, now now that we know that's a molecule, hopefully we can get more control over how that molecule encodes memories so that we might get better at finding a way of making the good memories stick around a little bit longer, making those bad memories hurt a little less, right? Making those insults be a little bit more of a group community building kind of thing instead of a shooting you down and making you feel like shit all the time kind of thing, right? Coming from construction, that they like to think that it's a term of endearment, but again, it's that context problem of, right? Like it's all fun and games until that moment that you feel your boss isn't working for you, and now you're just insulted, and you're going, why the fuck are you doing this to me? Instead of, us trying to work with each other and build us up towards something, right? Like, and it's very easy to have that switch in your brain where, everything was great today, but tomorrow, right? You do one thing wrong, your boss is upset with you, and now you have that switch. And if you have, rejection sensitive dysmorphia, right, it then becomes even worse in these loops inside your brain and hard to get out of. So so again, hopefully we have a better understanding of, and we can work towards, and it's one of those things where hopefully we can get to the point where we can just say, hey, was that what you meant? Right? Like,
Yeah.
try to find the context of this thing, right? Like, sometimes we have those snap judgments of, well, fuck you, instead of it being, wait, oh, did he really mean that? Right?
Yeah.
Like, was he just acting the asshole, or is he actually trying to be the
But it's
asshole?
a hard
here,
thing
you
to
know?
do, because
Exactly,
if your
exactly.
brain is now registered as a slap,
Yep.
you know, it's really tough if someone slapped you to really sit back and think about that person. You're like, oh, your face
give
is
them a
stinging,
real-
and you're like,
yeah,
he's
exactly.
had a
Yeah,
bad
yeah.
day. I should really ask him about it. No, of course not. You're going to be fucking angry, and you're going to want to slap him back.
Yeah. And that, you know, it I guess that's grace. Is that the word for it, right? Like, you know, having that you know, you
What, just
slapped
take
me.
it? Because that's the tough thing,
That's
too, right?
exactly
I mean,
right. Like, understand
yes,
the
you want to
context.
be the bigger
Yeah,
person
yeah.
and all of these things. Of course you do. But
While
also,
acknowledging that a slight has happened.
well, yeah, because you don't
Yeah.
just want to be a punching bag for everyone going through life either, you know?
Can't be that, no.
But this is where we've fallen into trouble, is because now everyone's going around indiscriminately slapping people with their words. And so it's just created this whole thing where, yeah, you don't want to just let it happen, but you also don't want to join them. So, you know, where does that leave you? And I feel like culturally we're being forced to almost pick a side in a lot of things, right?
Absolutely.
Where it's like, oh, join us, right? Like, this person's a fucking idiot, right?
Yeah.
You have to say that too. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, what if
It's
I
much
did?
better for social media for it to be black and white.
Well, of course.
Right.
And if you
To
don't
have those
join
two
it, then
sides.
suddenly you're labeled as this person, and now you know what it feels like to be on the receiving end, going, wait, how could this?
Let alone if the entirety of, I don't know, say your podcast was about trying to find the middle ground in these things so that you might be able to have some sort of conversation
Only a
between,
podcast like this existed.
you know, and let alone if you were, say, being persecuted by the platform that you were trying to post these things on, even though you were, you know,
Hypothetically.
again, trying to make very clear, no, not condoning, not, you know, I'm just trying to find the middle ground so that we can actually have a conversation instead of just shitting on each other about these things. And, you know, still being persecuted for it. It's tough, I get, to really, you know. Was that vague enough?
Nobody will know what you were talking
Nobody
about.
will understand the
No.
pain of trying to find the middle ground. And this, you know, and
It's tough, actually.
yeah.
Like, I mean, we have to do this delicate dance all the time of trying to, you know, you can't offend anybody. You can't say something that could potentially just be taken in a out of context, even though you didn't say that thing.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be accused of saying that thing, and it's really, really hard.
Yeah, even when you're trying to have a conversation about the exact opposite of the thing that they're trying to accuse you of, it's this weird,
Yeah.
you know, the algorithm says you said the words, so it must be bad, and that's just really weird to live under, right?
Yeah.
It's an odd situation where, you know, like, again, and it feels like a slap in the face, like an insult, like we've done something
does.
to,
Yeah.
you know, and why are you doing this to us? We didn't, right? Like, we're just trying to have the conversation of how to, right? Like, and you're slapping in the face for us?
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Without even telling us why. That's the best part.
Excuse me. Yes, absolutely.
We're just going to hit you. But what did I do? Oh.
Yeah. So find us on whatever other platforms. We're going to be moving around a little bit here, probably, in our search for a platform. But yeah, anyway. Yeah, so I think that's a good place to land us here in the land of no easy answers, is right smack dab in the middle of, as always.
As always.
Right in the middle
I
of the
know,
land of no easy answers, right? Yeah.
Take home message, try not to be a dick.
Well, and I guess it's my whole goal in life has been to be a dick when it's appropriate for me to be a dick.
Well, this brings us back full circle into the conversation again.
You know, but it's one of those things, like, there are times where, unfortunately, being a bit of a dick is unfortunately the only
Well,
way.
you do need
right?
to-
Like, where, you know, again, not trying to insult, but sometimes what I say could be construed as insulting, right?
Well, of course, that's just
You know,
human.
and again, like, not trying to break you down, but trying to build up. This is the part where I get where, you know, sometimes what I say, if you're used to everyone just blanket insulting you,
Yeah.
right? Whereas I try to be very specific about, if I'm insulting you, it's a very specific thing that you are doing that I'm trying to very specifically call out so that we might specifically deal about this particular thing. I'm not trying to call you that,
Yeah.
you know, other than you seem to be acting like that right now, and is that who you are, and is that something that we could talk about so that I can then get used to, oh, that made you feel like that? Oh shit, well, the next time I have that happen to me, I could then bring this up in my brain and go, I remember when they did that to me, I'm gonna try a different way here.
Yeah.
Right?
I feel like you're an anomaly for that, though.
Ew, gross. I'm an anomaly for a lot of things. I'm pretty anomalous. It's one of those. If there's a word that could be used to describe me, I mean, I'll grow 2 feet worth of hair off my face and then hack it off for no reason. You know, I do all sorts of fun little anomalous
But I do feel like a lot of people don't give it that much thought. And it's almost like going around on edge already assuming that that person is an idiot and therefore they're going to insult you. And it's an underlying assumption before they've even said anything, right? And I mean, like, hey, I'm guilty of it. I'm driving, and I'll just be like, yeah, that fucker right there, he's definitely going to do something that, you know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it's like,
you
I've
can
made
watch
an
them,
assumption.
right? If they're doing this down
and
there,
they usually
right?
do.
Oh, yeah.
But like, also, would I take it, you know, that
I'm very good at
seriously?
spotting them.
But if that's how you're going through life, is just assuming that everyone's an idiot before you've given them the chance to even do anything to you, well, this is how we've landed here.
Yeah.
You know? And how do we get back from that? Is kind of the discussion we need to be having.
Yeah, and I mean, the only thing that I can blame for my ability to kind of put myself in other shoes is the acting thing, right? Just having that, you know, having to try to find the motivation for emotions, right? Like realizing that, you know, you have emotions, but it's not like they're just bubbling out of nowhere. There's reasons why you're having this emotion,
course.
right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people get lost in that, where they're just floating through their life, just being like, I guess this is what we're doing,
Yeah.
right? Without having an awareness of, you know, again, like what motivated that person to treat you like that? Was it anything I actually did? And if it wasn't, well, then what was going on in their space that led them to bring to this to here?
Yeah.
You know, and having to really contemplate that in terms of like, okay, let's have a real discussion about the motivation between these things has really put me in that headspace of, you know, trying to actually, you know, like you said, it's hard, right?
Well, it
and when
is,
somebody
yeah.
smacks you, my first response is, oh, right? But, you know, having that, you know, oh, okay, whoa, right? Like has really helped in the end to just kind of give me that perspective, hopefully. I mean, as much as perspective as I'm fucking allowed, I guess, in this short little space I've got here.
I mean, I feel like we also really need to focus on it culturally to not have it be acceptable. Like that's got to be the starting point. It's too easy now, I think, you know, to have these irrational outbursts, to call people names, to go about slapping people, and it's resulting in what we see now, an over-depressed, over-anxious society where it's like everyone's fucking medicated because of it, right? So let's start with, how about we just make this less acceptable? Guess what? Customer service, fucking
Customers?
me in words. Industry, god damn it. Customer service industry needs to change. I'm sorry, gone are the days of the customer is always right, because we can't keep condoning this type of behavior. If you're going to treat somebody badly, you are back in kindergarten, you have a timeout, go stand against the wall for 10 minutes and think about what you've done. You still don't learn, now you're suspended, right? You still don't learn, well, now you're fucking expelled. You know, let's relay all of this into our current society. Kindergarten thinking.
Here's an idea.
It's not okay.
Instead of having tips, let's charge people the extra 30%. And then if you, the server, decide that they are worth it, you can give them the discount.
Just flip it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've always thought there should be an asshole charge.
Oh, absolutely. Stupid charge, asshole charge.
In
There's
retail,
all sorts of-
restaurants,
yeah,
anywhere, if you're
right.
a dick, you get penalized for it. This is, how it should be working. So let's try and start this movement. Let's stop.
So at least you better be a rich dick.
What's sad is there are those rich assholes out there that would willingly pay that charge just to treat you like shit.
Yeah, and then they would be like, all right, so I get to treat you as shitty as I want? Awesome, right?
Oh,
Before I was
God.
holding it back, right? Like, this is what I really am.
Well, we can't fix all the world's problems right now, but
No.
we can try.
We're
We can
working on
start.
it. Yeah, so to bring it back to full circle, I guess don't be an asshole. That's the first step towards making the insults sting a little less, I guess.
Yeah, and, you know, let's not condone anyone else being an asshole either, right? Like, let's start really just not calling people out, because I feel like aggression with aggression is never going to end well. But, you know, just that a little shake of the head sometimes goes a long way. You know, you see that person having a meltdown and taking it out on the cashier at the supermarket, just give them the shame nod. You know, little things that need to start happening.
I'm going to bring this because we talk about this a lot. Like, just give more hugs. Like, that person that's being insulting is requiring, I think, a little more love. And I think that's what we need to start bringing out here is that, like, despite you being an asshole right now, I still love you. I still think you're worthy of love. I still think that there's part of us that, responds to that. I think that's the part that we've lost, is that we haven't been giving each other that love to be able to feel that acceptance of what an actual accepting society would look like. What would it look like where everyone around you to just be your friend, unequivocally, no questions asked, we're just here to help each other out? What would that really look like to have that utopian society? Right? Because I'm pretty sure it wouldn't look like what we're doing right now.
Oh, no.
And that becomes a real question of, so what do we do about that? Right? Like, and if the answer is just give more hugs.
Yeah.
Right? Like the next time you're thinking about insulting someone, say something nice about them. Just find something, compliment their nail polish. Your toes look amazing today. That's the kind of shit, like that. It's those little things that I think we've lost sight of, right? Like it's that little stuff. Like it may take you 10 compliments to overcome that one insult. So let's start getting that 10 compliments out a day.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If you're going to give one insult, you have to understand that in terms of balance in a brain, that's a 10-to-1 kind of ratio.
Yeah.
Right? And I mean, also think about this, like how much better would you feel giving out compliments every day instead of giving out insults? Right? Like how much better would the people around you feel? How much better would, your general existence be if you wandered around just being complimentary to people? Instead of that social media comment shitting on someone for something, like find something nice, find some nice way of bringing people up. There's plenty of shooting people down, and we're going to have lots of time for that. Right? And again, I try to be specific about it. I don't shit on you generally. I don't think you are a shitty person. I think sometimes we do shitty things, just like all of us. I don't consider myself, I mean, I do some shitty stuff sometimes, and I apologize, right? But
you
I
more
try
than
to,
most.
see, that's the anomaly of, right? Like, but I also try to do really nice things all the time. I try to be that person that waves, if you let me into traffic, I try to be the person that holds doors open and says thank you and tries to, like have that amount of just self-awareness going on.
Which, I think you're right. We need to, right? If our brains have a tendency towards the negative, which is the thing, negativity bias, for some reason, we hold on to any negative thought more strongly, take it more seriously than anything positive. So now that we know this, now that science is finally showing us exactly why, or not why, but how this is happening, we can start to think, okay, how can we overcome it? Now that we know we have this tendency, like you said, if it's going to be 10 times harder, but God, how much better do I feel when it's, giving a compliment, positivity.
Or receiving.
Right? And, public service announcement for everyone too, right? You're not going to get the same payoff as the negative because straight away you're getting a result when you're throwing an insult at someone. Straight away. You've just thrown that slap. You feel better, right? So it's 10 times more when it comes to the positive and paying compliments for you to feel something out of it. Right?
Yeah.
Which might not be the best motivation. Work 10 times harder, everybody.
But it's one of those things where I also feel like the payoff in the end, it's like
My stomach
kicking.
is growling so loud.
I was just having that. I was like, I hope the microphone wasn't picking that up. Okay.
Sorry, everybody.
But it's so much easier to kick over a sandcastle than it is to build it.
Yeah.
Right. But I like to believe that it's much more satisfying to have built it in the first place, even if it gets kicked over in the end.
Well, there must be some threshold level to it as well, right? Because using that analogy, it's usually the kid that feels outside of, that wants to go and destroy. But the more people that you get together, and now you're all playing and making a sandcastle-looking community, right? Now all of a sudden, more people are coming to join and build sandcastles.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
the sand kicker is slowly just going to, either want to join or go his own merry way. So
Exactly.
it's going to take a lot of, more work initially, but I argue that it could reach that threshold level where it now just becomes normal. Let's all build sandcastles together.
And so now instead of having the schoolyard fight where the kids are standing around going fight, 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 we change it to where all the kids are standing around going hug, hug, hug. Like seriously, but that's what we need to get into the idea of, instead of having the group mentality as fight, why not have the group mentality be like, hey guys, there's no reason to do this. It's okay. We can all just get along and have the whole group get together, have a little mediation where everybody has a little talk. We have a little thing. We get to hopefully walk out of it a little better, right?
Yeah.
Like, instead of having to feel like the only response to this situation is to throw a punch,
Yeah.
you know, let alone to have media condone that
Yeah.
in any way. You know, like there's just, unfortunately, kind of, as far as I'm concerned, no real situation where, you know, that's, you know, like we got war going on, you know, that's another situation.
Yeah. Media
But-
does need to take a lot of responsibility here, right? How they portray things to kids, even just, you know, in the daily news, how it's like there are now buzzwords that are being labeled to be emotionally reactive, things that shouldn't be, you know, and they need to really step up and take responsibility for this now that we actually have evidence showing that this is how it affects the brain.
Well, and here, like, I mean, not to shit on, but to go to the motivation of, they know that it's 10 times worse. That's why
Well, of course,
they
yeah,
always
we
show
all-
it.
we know
it's
that,
much
yeah.
more exciting to put it on there. If we were all just going, just hug, it
Yeah,
wouldn't
of
be
course.
very. So,
well, and
yeah,
if you're
I
getting
mean,
those
so
immediate
that's just,
reactions,
you know,
you want to
yeah.
hear more about the negative, right? So you're
Exactly.
going to hop on
So-
board and then seek out more. That isn't, yeah.
So I guess we have to just, again, define what's fiction and what's fact and make sure that everybody understands that, you know, like that fiction of fight, fight, fight
Yeah.
is hopefully that, just a fiction that we can, you know, replace with this narrative of, no, we actually do care about each other.
Yeah.
We actually want each other's, you know, well-being. We hold each other's well-being inside of us. And you feeling better about yourself makes me feel better about myself, because you're going to pass that along too. If I've complimented you today and you pass that along to someone else,
Yeah.
right? Well, now we started a chain, right? And
Yeah.
now we just have that, you know, pass it forward kind of thing going, right? Where,
Yeah.
you know, all it takes is that one little nice thing, and the ripple effect of that you can't even be aware of
Yeah.
sometimes. You
Yeah.
know, it's the same thing with the negativity. And that's the issue here, is that ripple effect we're not aware of. We don't like to consider the ramifications of our actions future on down
Yeah,
the
of
right?
course,
Like,
yeah.
you know,
We don't want to
whatever.
wait and see how that's going to benefit in the future. It's like,
Exactly.
well, right now, I want
I'm just gonna have a
this.
clipboard here. We're just gonna chart the feelings of, oh, you didn't like that today? Okay. Right? Like long-term effects of, have a real study of this thing. No, it's not like that, right? Like, again, it's that smack and walk away.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Yeah. So I guess I'm hoping that's where the lesson of the land of no easy answers today is just give more hugs. That's the answer.
Don't be a dick. Give more hugs. There we go. Just skip to the end. We could have saved you all 25 minutes.
Well, again, it's the motivation of, you have to understand the motivation. You have to understand why your brain does this. That's the problem I think that we have had, is that we haven't understand why.
Yeah.
Right? Like we've thrown people into mental asylums for having thoughts that were deemed contrary to
Yeah.
what everybody knew.
Yeah.
Right? Or worse, you know, stoned or burned at the, right? Like there's been all sorts of examples where people who have had these contrary thoughts
Yeah.
have been, you know, that were later borne out to be absolutely fucking true, and yet for thousands of years
Yeah.
we crucified and sacrificed, and right, like,
And it'll happen again, right?
Right.
People will look back on our generation, the people that we've labeled as evil and demons and, you know, other, and probably in 50 years it'll go like, what the fuck were you doing? This was so illegal. I can't believe this could happen, but, you know,
well,
we're
that's
only human.
yeah, that's a separate. We'll have another discussion
yeah.
about going back into history and pulling up shit as if we could judge them for, right? Like that's, you know.
Well, that's it.
They did the best they could. We're doing the best we can, and hopefully we're growing as we go. That's really about all we can kind of hope for people, and I'm hoping we can. Yeah, we'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Well, let us know what you think. Chime in the comments below. Let us know if you think there's anything that can help in this situation. What can we all do to spread a little bit more kindness? What can we do to help recognize this negativity bias that we all have? Yeah, definitely interested in what you all have to think. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you haven't already.
Bam, bam, bam.
Damn. Like, share, all of that good stuff. Follow us, all these, you know, things.
Comments. Check us out on other platforms. We're going to start trying to get it into other places. We'll do stuff. Don't worry. We'll be doing stuff.
They're like, you've told us about this stuff for years.
We're still here. Still here.
Well,
So,
thanks.
yeah.
Thanks for joining us, everyone, and we will see you next time.
Have a good one.
Bye.